thing that was going through my head as you were talking, native people seem to have kept the idea of this relationship with nature much better than us so-called civilized people.
Particularly Native American and First Nations and North American spirituality, because that's come up time and again when people talk about, if we start thinking about kinship and community of creation, on one level it gets hokey and it seems kind of, weird saints and stuff. But, what if in our grace before meals, we adopted that tradition? We always thank God, right? Bless us, O Lord, in these, your gifts, which we're about to receive, but do we ever give gratitude to the life that has gone before us, the animals that have provided their lives, in a sense, for our nourishment, or the plant life? I think Francis of Assisi would understand that intuitively. God makes the covenant, renews the covenant with all living creatures, and says that at least 3 times in that exchange. And so, there's a relationship that God has. The rest of creation doesn't need us as middle people to the Creator. And I think that's where I'm hesitant to kind of fully embrace some of the Orthodox, the Eastern Christian language of stewardship, because I don't honestly think that tree across the street needs me to have a right relationship with God. In fact, Francis of Assisi would say quite the opposite. No, that tree's praying to God better than we are, because it's not trying to be anything else other than a tree. We are, on the other hand, try time and time again to be something other than ourselves. I think in terms of prayer life, one thing that I've taken away is, can my prayer of gratitude for the food I've received also include a recognition of the life in this life cycle of this family of creation that has been given so that I may live? But for me personally, I love thinking in astronomical terms and thinking about the universe's history. 13.8 billion years. We've only been around in our form as Homo sapiens sapiens for about 20,000 years. Like, we're not that old. The dinosaurs were only like 60 million years ago. 13.8 billion years is a long, long time. And, the arrogance, the hubris to think, like, God created all this stuff just for us. We have a special place within this cosmos. But this is where I think the beauty of the Canticle of the Creatures, the Canticle of the Sun, really comes in. Maybe I'll say just something else about that, which is, Pope Francis, the other St. Francis, from 800 years ago, he begins the Canticle by saying, "Praise be you, my Lord." And he says that you deserve all praise, all glory, all goodness. No human beings are worthy to utter your name. That's the opening line. And then he begins with what we are most familiar with. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sir, brother, sun, who gives us light and rays. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister, the moon, blah, blah, blah. And at each turn for 9 verses, St. Francis names an aspect of creation, and then names what that aspect of creation does. Then he gets down to, St. Francis introduces human beings again, right? He had already said we're not worthy to mention God's name because we are not giving praise to God. He says, human beings give praise to you, O Lord, when they are peacemakers, reconcilers, lovers, and people who bring about forgiveness. And so often we don't live up to what we're created to be. It's all about us. It's our selfishness. It's about division, which really, that's what Genesis 3 is all about. What's the temptation that the serpent presents to the woman and man? It's like, you're not good enough. You're not good the way you are. You got to be something else. You're not sufficient as human beings. You know what? You should be like God. And if you eat this fruit, even though God told you not to, then you'll be like God. From the very beginning, it's trying to be something other.
Why do you think Pope Francis wrote this? He's taken a lot of heat from it from a lot of people.
Yes, yeah. Interestingly, the heat has come from 2 different areas on 2 different continents. In the United States, the heat has come from the environmental implications. That's where a lot of the kind of media grabbing attention. We'll remember certain unnamed presidential aspirants who said, the Pope should leave this stuff to the scientists, and then found out that Pope Francis has a master's degree in chemistry and knows a little bit about science. The discussion here is about the so-called climate change debate. And I say so-called because one of the things that was striking to North American readers, and really limited to North America, because while there are, we might call them climate change doubters or questioners elsewhere in the world, it's nothing like it is here in the US. Pope Francis presupposes that climate change and humanity's relationship to it, it's partial cause. I mean, we didn't cause everything, there are natural cycles to life, but we have caused problems and devastation to this planet and into the climate. That's just taken for granted. The real debate from his perspective is, what do we do about it? Mm-hmm. Some of the other flack from Europe has been questions about, and this is also to a lesser degree some of the problems in the US too, questions about his economic proposals or critiques, and that comes from all different sides. So it's almost too manifold to really narrow down into why he did this. I would say, I would quote Rowan Williams, who wrote a great article in the magazine Commonweal a couple weeks ago, where he says, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, an eminent theologian in his own right, who himself has written about creation to a lesser degree, but in a few essays. And also happens to be really good friends with Pope Emeritus Benedict. And he proposes that one of the reasons Pope Francis wrote this is to be in continuity with his predecessor. It was interesting that Benedict XVI was considered the green pope prior to Pope Francis showing up on the scene. We forgot that already. But if you go back and look at his encyclicals like Caritas and Veritate, Deus Caritas Est, and some of those other earlier texts, he's mentioning things like critiques of technology, the importance of what Pope Francis will call an integral ecology, that we have to take the way that we relate to one another and our economy, the way we deal with money, capital in this regard, and the way we care for the environment. We need to bring these things closer together. So on the one hand, I'd say he's doing this because people like Benedict XVI have already paved the way. I think he's doing this because he's hearing and listening to the experiences of both the scientific community that has been clamoring for attention, and to some degree the world has responded. The Kyoto protocols. So I think Pope Francis, living up to his mandate to call for a poor church for the poor, sees it as just the natural thing. This is what our faith, this is what our tradition teaches. Here's how it applies in our world today. So I think the first thing that we can do, an important thing, is to be open to hearing about what is going on in the world. Another thing is to incorporate that into our prayer life and our spiritual life, right, which is not unimportant. And so I mentioned the grace before meals as something, but how is it that we are mindful of, in our prayer, our relationship to the rest of creation? That's one thing. And hearing the cry of the poor, our relationship to our brothers and sisters who are experiencing material poverty. I think there are also then, and I'm talking only on an individual level, there are concrete things we can do that, while it may not turn the whole tide of these problems around, will begin to make us more aware of what's going on.